Welcome to the latest episode of the Blazing Musket podcast. We are back for our July roundtable. Just getting this one in at the very end of the month. Some of us have been on vacation. Some of us have been enjoying our team winning and making it all the way to national final. And the rest of us have just kind of been existing, dealing with rivalries, loud, annoying goalkeepers, and many, many other things. So hopefully you've had a great month of July. I'm sure everyone on the show has had a great month of July as well, because there is only one New England Revolution fan on this show, and I'm kind of giving up, and I'm going to let that ship sink to the bottom of the ocean. So we will not be talking about the Revs tonight. Caleb Porter still has a job at the time of recording, which is remarkable, but we will let Revolution Recap dive into why that is. We have 4 other much more successful teams that we can talk about tonight, and so that is what we shall do. I'm going to kick it off. We're going to go around, and again, let's just just kind of introduce yourself quickly, and just give us a very quick rundown of how your summer has been so far. And we will start with our representation from Vermont.
You know something, Tom? My summer's been great.
Has it?
Right now, we're looking at a national final coming up. We had the semifinal last night, if you can hear my voice. I do the United in Green podcast. I also yell on a megaphone at about 600 to 700 crazy fans in my section, and try and engage the next 300 to 500 in the sections further north in the stands. So it's not just myself tonight that has the raspy voice. I think a lot of the Green Mountain boys who were there and also have no voices. We're putting off the United in Green podcast that we were going to do tonight at 8 p.m. Because of the fact that we can't talk. So we shouted to the heavens last night, and we were rewarded very kindly by the gods in the sky. With a 6'6", 6'7" goalkeeper with giant hands, and a player like Owen O'Malley. So we play on Saturday versus Ballard FC, which is USL2 royalty. So, and they have to come to us at Virtue Field. I'm very excited for it. Hopefully I have my voice back by then, but if I don't, I'll just work with what I've got.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's been great to see that they've had all the home games, home field advantage the whole way through, and they, packed the place out. They got people standing in ladders so they can watch the game. I think they sold the game out in like 30 seconds. I'm sure they'll do the same thing when tickets go on sale for that one.
Yeah, there were 2,600 in the stadium and probably another 1,000 outside easily.
Yeah, no, it's pretty crazy. So. They the team has said they need to get a bigger stadium, and for sure you can see why.
Yes.
All right, let's jump down. Actually, let's jump down to Hartford. Apparently, Hartford has advanced in a tournament and not gone out at the earliest possible opportunity. So, Nathan, can you fill us in on what exactly has gone on down here in Hartford?
So kind of the eyes of the USL have been on these last kind of 2 weeks in Pawtucket with Hartford and Rhode Island. And I'd argue kind of it didn't really go the way either team would have wanted it to. Ultimately get 2 draws. And then in that Jägermeister Cup game, Hartford comes out on top and what ends up being a pretty meaningless penalty shootout with the way that everything kind of played out with the group stage. With both Rhode Island and Hartford kind of going through, but besides the games, which I was by the second half of game number 2, I wasn't really watching the game. I was watching for what was happening, in the stands between the players because there were fireworks. There were certainly a lot of fireworks, and I mean we'll dive into it sort of as we get on with the night. But if there's one thing that's sort of come out of this last 2 weeks from a neutral standpoint. It's that this rivalry that has sort of been marketed as a rivalry just because of proximity over the last 2 years is for sure real now. I mean, from the supporters group to the kind of front offices to the players, it is a real thing. There are emotions involved. These two teams are not particularly fond of each other after what has happened in these last 180 minutes of soccer. So it's going to be a really exciting thing to follow. I think once everyone sort of has time to sit back and reflect on kind of the bigger picture after sort of the emotions of this game. So it's been exciting. It's been a lot. It's been very busy, but it's been a good couple of weeks for the Eastern Conference in the USL.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, how did these two games kind of live up to your expectations? I know you very wisely spoke about this might not be the great thing that it sounds like, these teams playing each other so much and so often. But having now actually gone through that experience, how was it?
I mean, like Nathan said, the score results were not what either team wanted. I will say there was a little bit more meaning in the winning of the penalties for Hartford, because it was with those points that allowed them to be a contender for their wild card at birth. So without that, they would have very much been on the outside. It's unfortunate that Rhode Island FC couldn't get the win on the night, and then by not doing so, even in penalties, allowed Hartford to slip in. I don't think Hartford won that game so much as Rhode Island FC just didn't do enough. But I had mentioned at the beginning of the year that games back to back, sometimes it's hard. You almost need to catch your breath in those moments. Focus up, come back a month later, and stick it to whatever was wrong, you fix. Whatever you got right, you double down on. And I was worried, that these games would be, especially after a 0-0 draw, the first one out. But luckily, we now have Anthony Siaha, who's going to take all of the rivalry on his shoulders and run around and make a spectacle. Listen, I can't wait for the August match now. I fully expect that even if he loses on that game, he's still going to do something, because Anthony Siaha has firmly placed himself as target number one of this derby, and it's what it needs. It's going to elevate the game overall. It's going to elevate the league. I don't care what people say about the Interproximal Association Handshake Club or whatever they call the one between Lou and Indy. This is the rivalry of USL Championship now, and you can't prove me wrong, because 2 draws end in that much calamity. El Clamico is here to stay.
Yeah, I mean, imagine if somebody wins one of these games. And now, because RIFC have gone through in the Jägermeister Cup, Hartford's also gone through in the Jägermeister Cup. Does that then set up the possibility that these teams will play each other yet again this season, should they both advance? Has anyone looked how far into the bracket they'd have to go to meet up for, what would that, a 5th time?
So there's no bracket. It's rolled strictly by the first grouping. And then what they'll do is they'll reset it again, and they'll determine who gets seeding priority as far as home advantage amongst the winners, and they'll continue to do that randomly until the final. So there is a chance, if both teams advance, that there could be another showing. I suspiciously think that there are some mechanisms within the control of this league that they don't want that again, but it is possible that, just like when we were, because there was a scenario where Birmingham would have taken wild card 2 and Hartford would have taken wild card 1, and in that case, because the predetermined draw had already been selected, we would have seen Hartford in that selection, but you can't play them again in the first round. It's against the cup rules. So they had a mechanism in place that would have rotated that. I'm sure they have another mechanism to either keep these two teams away from each other until the final, or just do it again. Let's do it in the semis, and let's have some fun with it. But I also guarantee you, I have a feeling that if these two teams meet again, it's going to be at Trinity Health Stadium for the next one. Just call it a hunch.
Yeah, that for sure would be interesting. And the USL can maybe borrow a page from MLS, do a little random draw, and make sure they get the matchup that they want. Now, Shawn, the Portland Hearts of Pine were not able to advance out of the Jägermeister Cup group stage, but how have things been going? How has that experience generally? But how have things been going in the league? It seems like they've had a decent uptick in form as we've gotten deeper into the summer.
Yeah, we went down there to Hartford, just after our last recording. Matt and I were talking about, that was just about a couple weeks in front of us. We went down there and had a good time with RIFC. And RIFC had a really good time with us, 4-1 scoreline. and the Hearts crashed out of the Jägermeister Cup. We talked about going into that. Hearts were playing with no net. So I had a hunch maybe Bobby would go for it. We saw the starting 11, and I said, Matt, I guess Bobby's not going for it. So largely rotated side, and the score line showed it 4-1, and the Hearts are out of the Jägermeister Cup. But, he still had a good time down there with those guys, and certainly enjoyed my visit down there. Can't wait to get down there and do that again. That was fun. Good away day for us. But getting back into the league, we started July, and then we had our first homestand and kind of tripped over the welcome mat of Fitzpatrick Stadium, if you will. And we got 1 point out of 2 games and kind of embarrassed ourselves a little bit. But we rebounded. We had a 3-game week the following week, and we took 7 points out of us 3 games. And we scratched ourselves up into 8th place, which is a playoff spot in USL League One. And so now, for the first time this year, the Hearts are sitting in a playoff spot. And with 15 games in front of us, exactly half of the season still in front of us, it's all to play for the Hearts. And we're looking to move up the table from our current 8th place position.
Yeah, so pretty good all the way around, which I don't know that. If you don't pay too much attention to the USL Championship standings for Rhode Island and for Hartford, but Mike, next season in the U.S. Open Cup, am I correct that the Vermont Green will be returning to that glorious competition?
Yeah, we had the decision was made to allow, I believe, the division winners to advance the U.S. Open Cup. After last year, they only invited the national champion, which was the hated Seaboats United, and they declined. So, I think there was a little bit of fallout from the USL2 owners, and I think that when you're not inviting the lower leagues, you get less chance of the cup sets that they call them. You get fewer teams that are unknown, joining the fray and being able to put on display what the league can do. I feel like a lot of the top tier teams in the USL2 can compete with some of the lower tier teams in the USL1, and especially some of the other pre-professional leagues as well. Vermont Green after their cup set of Lex SC, they went on and played an MLS Next team in Carolina Core and nearly pulled off another cup set, if not for the last 15 minutes of the game where they got just blown out because they were tired. I think that USL2 can put out a product that can be competitive with some of the USL1 teams, and it makes things more interesting, I think, for the US Open Cup as well, especially if not as many of the MLS teams are going, go out there and compete in that contest. So, we don't necessarily go out there thinking that we're going to win and dominate that tournament. Obviously not. You have a lot of professional players who have been doing this for a long time, playing against a bunch of college kids, but the excitement is what it's all about. The hope and the chance, the off chance that you can pull off a cup set or two.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, all right. And the other thing too, there are a couple of USL League 2 teams that are actually moving into League 1 next year, right? They're going to go professional and that whole thing. So there's definitely some teams that seem to be kind of right on the cusp. Mike, let me ask you this. If you could pick which of the 3 other RIFC, Hartford, or Portland that the Vermont Green could get drawn against if they advance through the first round of the US Open Cup next year, which one of those 3 teams would you like to? Let's assume it's an away game, because there might still be 2 feet of snow on the ground up in Vermont. Not that there wouldn't be in Portland as well. But where would you want to see this team go and try and pull off a big upset?
Of the teams that these 3 guys represent on this round table, my heart says RIFC.
Follow your heart.
Follow my heart, exactly. I think that we would thoroughly, this team that we have now would thoroughly embarrass Hartford. But I think that the right call would probably be Portland Hearts of Pine, just based on the fact that I said what I said about, I think that this club, this team in particular this year could compete maybe mid-table or higher in the USL 1 that as it's currently, collected. But, I think that Portland Hearts of Pine and Vermont are kindred in ways. And I think that we both have the same type of, like, as clubs, both have the same type of mission, the same type of vibes. Portland has a great fan base, a great following. Vermont Green has a great following, great fan base. We unfortunately don't have the stadium that Portland has, which would be really nice for us. But I think that would just be an easy rivalry to have. And I think that both clubs are hopefully working on a way to get a friendly in next season.
Yeah, no, that would be.
We can't keep beating up on teams like Providence,
I mean, that is kind of the crazy thing about the USL League too, right? Is like there's definitely some big disparity in the strength of some of those squads, particularly in the the division stage or whatever it's called. All right, so let's see, where do we want to go from here? All right, Matt and Nathan, can you please explain what happened off the field? The goalkeeper obviously provided some level of entertainment. I really don't know, because this may come as a surprise. Twitter is not a reliable source of accurate information about things that happen off the field in soccer games. So can the two of you just kind of mesh out what happened in the first game, the consequences in the second game, and then any of your own thoughts and opinions on
So even without those antics, this was already kind of a powder keg moment. You look at in year one, the Rhode Island FC supporters group had their banners stolen while being protected under the guard of Hartford Athletic employees. And then in the same year, you have Hartford Athletic fans, come in and shoot fireworks amongst the stands. Looks great for soccer culture, gets on the Men in Blazers account, but it hurts 5 or 6 fans in the process of shooting incendiaries in a confining group of people. So there's already these animosities built up, this pent up, I don't want to say aggression, but this expectation that something will happen. Mm-hmm. Now you amplify it with what happens at the end of the match. Basically, Anthony Siaha, the goalkeeper for Hartford Athletic, who played a very good game and kept Hartford in the draw to begin with, because, and I don't say this because of angst towards the team, they weren't there to play for a win. They were down with some of their offensive weaponry depleted. They very much wanted to play for a draw. Didn't have any dangerous real looks. RIFC was trying to figure things out as they were getting players returning back to health. And so you've got one team holding on for dear life. You've got another team not good enough yet to find the winning goal. And so full credit to Siaha. He has a really good game. Probably one of the best games of his career. Unfortunately, because of all of the rivalry, because of all the antics, some of it manufactured by each front office, some of it manufactured from the fans and the culture, he goes around and he starts showboating. And he starts silencing the crowd of 10,500 strong, doing, the finger to the lips, the listening with his, his ears cupped. And he doesn't do it for one time. He doesn't do it to one player. He goes around on a stadium tour, just antagonizing the entire group. At one point, the RFC team did not appreciate it anymore. There was a little bit of a grab and go as the two teams, neither one of them failing to kind of get off the pitch, meet towards the halfway line. Some jerseys are grabbed, and suddenly Noah Fuson goes after Anthony Siaha. He's just chasing him down to get him to stop. Somehow Koke Vegas is right there in the middle of it. He's not even dressed for the game. He's still on the injury list. And he's trying to power walk chase Siaha around the pitch to calm him down. They have a long-standing history and relationship from their time, both as goalkeepers in the Western Conference. He's trying to calm him down, and then Siaha goes. And we've all been trying to find the right broadcaster term. So I call it a moment of self-indulgence, of pleasure pursued, and goes and makes a lewd gesture at Noah Fuson, which the fans are all spotlighted watching him. It's on CBS as a big broadcast. This is on CBS Prime, and you already had an angry fan base, and now everyone's livid. Mm-hmm. And full credit to the club. I think they handled it the best they could. I don't think anyone thought that the antics would get to that level, but Siaha starts going towards the player tunnel, still antagonizing everyone. Unfortunately, the RIFC fans were not on their best behavior, both in some of the things that they were shouting. Some things were thrown. Unfortunately, a lot of code of conduct violations occurring in the moment, and you get a conclusion to a 0-0 game that didn't deserve that much flair. It didn't deserve that much pomp and circumstance after the match. Hartford only had 0 shots on target. So, I mean, it wasn't a game that deserved as much as it got, but it created the spark and the baseline for what was to come in the second round against Jaeger in the Jägermeister Cup the following weekend.
Yeah, I saw some of the clips after the game, and it's kind of funny, but then at the same time, it's like, I think you have to be as an athlete. I think you kind of have to be aware of if you do something like that. Like, okay, maybe you're just trying to have fun or whatever, but you're gonna incite something. You're gonna upset people. That doesn't excuse anyone's behavior, but it just seemed like a really unnecessary thing to do. And like you said, I mean, it was a middle of the season, 0-0 draw. Like, it wasn't like there was no cup was won, no playoffs were qualified for. It just seemed like a bit of an odd thing for someone to do. And then obviously there was a response from the fans after that. So then was the supporters group just kind of told to get be on better behavior this past week, a slap on the wrist, or what was the ramifications from that?
So the ramifications were pretty tough. They came from both an agreement from the league, from the club, and the supporters group that because of the violations of the code of conduct, that there would be sanctions in place, resulting in them not being allowed to bring in flags, banners, or smoke for the match. They were still authorized to bring in drums. They were still permitted to chant, but Defiance, reading between the lines and looking at the posts that they had from their subgroups from Robin Front to La Banda 401, they didn't feel that collective punishment was the correct approach from the league and from the team. And listen, I'm going to tell you right now, there's no right answer here, right? The only thing we know is that they violated the code of conduct, and there are confirmed violations of that. I do want to separate that because there's been a lot of noise online about the fight that broke out with an RIFC fan arrested out in the beyond the stadium grounds. That had nothing to do with the supporters group. That was just 2 random fans, probably fueled by the Siaha moment and the fact that it's the Derby and probably some adult beverages of the day. But those are 2 fans that came at each other. No one jumped one fan. It was just 2 stupid fans wanting to fight. Sure. Unfortunately, the RIFC fan threw the first punch, so he gets to spend the night in the gulag. And as a result, you see the team needing to take all of these different security measures and approaches on how they're going to handle game 2. With the supporter group now back to it, they issue a formal apology. I think they took way too much accountability for everything that happened there. I do believe that the team, I believe both teams own some of this to a certain extent, and I don't think it's fair that the supporters group kind of got painted as the only target. I mean, Hartford never apologized for the antics last year on either occasion. Rhode Island FC didn't apologize for the lack of security to protect Hartford fans as they left the stadium. So, like, there's equal distribution of things that should have been done. But having said that, supporters group is then now under sanctions. They choose not to chant. They choose not to bring their drums into the stadium as a way of saying, hey, like, we don't agree with this, but we'll comply. It's that, passive compliance, right? Passive aggressive compliance in that sense. So it definitely changed the dynamic of the second match. We were joking offline beforehand, but I recorded a post about it, and someone was like, oh, this is just a Revs game now, because there was no culture, there was no flair, there was no noise for the most part. And it's shocking what can happen when you take kind of like the literal drumbeat, the lifeblood of the stadium's fan group out of it. I'm not going to say that it hurt the player performances. The players acknowledged in the post game that while they understood that the supporters group wasn't there, they still have passionate fans. They appreciate all the fans that showed up. But it definitely felt like the wind wasn't in the sails from a fan supporter side of that. Nate, I don't know what you saw on the Hartford side of that, but like that's kind of where things were going for both of these matches.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the first game, like, first of all, agree with you there that, like, you never, when you see something like that happen at the end of the game, it kind of, the first instinct is it puts a bad taste in your mouth. I think looking at it from both sides, I was just, there's a little bit of like, come on, man, like, what's up? It's a 0-0 tie. It's a pretty uneventful 0-0 tie. But that said, I agree with you where Siaha was far and away probably the best player in that game. Made a few crucial saves. I mean, there was an incredible one in the second half that was pretty much responsible for earning Hartford that point on the road. And then when you don't look at the match and when you see a tie, you're happier with that result as the road team. So there's kind of a lot of that happening where I think Hartford, looking back at last year, really didn't have a leg in this rivalry kind of coming into this year. And they had something to prove, and they had a chip on their shoulders, and they did have a few guys kind of return from last year's squad. So although we see a whole ton of kind of squad rotation from season to season in the USL, there was still a contingent of guys that had been there, that had experienced it last year. And kind of no matter what part of the rivalry you're on or what team you are, it doesn't feel good to go to Rhode Island and get killed 3-0 as you're trying to grow this thing. So there's certainly kind of a lot of emotions that are behind it that I think came out in that moment. But again, as we talk about kind of the neutral standpoint here, without those post-game antics, you look at the game and it really wasn't a good product in terms of the game, of the chances that were created. And we know it as soccer fans, but sometimes that happens, and just kind of unfortunate that was the big CBS game and the stage that was set for it. But those moments at the end of the day, well, they're unfortunate. Well, you don't like to see them, and obviously you don't like that to lead to any sort of violent activity. It also really set the stage for game number 2 in that, I mean, start with the fact that whether you're in the stadium or watching the broadcast, Anthony Siaha was very clearly not was public enemy number 1 for fans at Centerville Bank Stadium, getting pretty violently booed off the ball every time he kind of touched it. And fans were just we're not having it with him. And that's sort of stuff that you really rarely see in the USL. So I'm very cautious to kind of say like, oh, this was a good thing. But at the same time, like, there are moments like that really fuel the rivalry and kind of, as I was saying before, make it feel a little bit more real. So it makes me kind of cautiously excited for what's to come on August 23rd and, potentially the 17th matchup between these two teams if they go so far in the Jägermeister Cup. But we'll see what happens.
Shawn and Mike, you both are, like you mentioned before, you're both part of supporters groups as well, right? You're both participating in what is going on during the games. Can either one of you talk about, like, what are the challenges to that? Like, you like Mike, like you said right at the beginning, you want everyone to be into it and loud and right, but how? Like, what are the challenges trying to make sure that stays in a appropriate way where everybody can just go home peacefully at the end of the night?
I'm going to let Shawn speak to this because they do have a bigger stadium. I mean, I'm sure the challenges are different, based on number of people and where the concentrated efforts of the supporters groups are. So I'm going to let Shawn speak to that first, and then I'll give my perspective as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of just the location of the supporters and just the security side of things and keeping people organized, from an SG point of view, that is up to the SG leaders to kind of organize their SG group while still in the stands. If things are happening during the match or just immediately after the match is coming out of the SG group, it's up to the SG leadership to kind of keep that all in check. But when SGs start leaving the stadium, there is some sort of organization that does go into effect as they're leaving the stadium. But we do have some SG that stay behind and help break things down. But at a certain point, everyone's responsible for their own actions, right? And when it comes down to rivalries and what makes a good rivalry, for me, it's a lot of the actions that are on the field that make a good rivalry. The sporting aspect, the tough play, maybe some physicality, some games that go by that just get nixed at the very end. And of course, the SGs back and forth doing what they do during the match, all in the good orchestra of the game, if you will. That to me is what makes good rivalries. And I understand the emotions kind of get to some people a little bit more than others. Maybe their actions probably really weren't the best, and looking back on it, they wish they hadn't. And that comes from supporters. And I say supporters, I'm not talking SG. I'm talking about just regular RIFC or Hartford or Hearts of Pine supporters that just go to a match, not necessarily associated with the SGs, that, maybe their emotions are kind of getting the best of them. But I think, we can probably do without any sort of actions that put people in danger, whether that's players or whether that's supporters. That is not a part of a good derby. You're bordering on hooliganism at that point in time, hooliganism, and that is not what we want in our game.
Yeah, like Mike. I mean, I know Seagoats doesn't have any fans, but what?
Well, I mean, we did have a situation earlier in the season. Well, actually, final game of the season this year at Western Mass Pioneers down at Lusitano Stadium, where and I know it sounds petty and it sounds foolish and weird, but we were away fans traveling. We had set up some space for ourselves with the club, with Western Massachusetts Club. We set up some space for ourselves as a supportive group with the police because of what had happened the year before. And I'm going to mention it right here and now, and I'll leave it at that. But Western Mass Pioneers as a club should be ashamed of themselves, the way that they allowed their youth teams to behave, and the parents should be ashamed of how they allowed their kids to behave, because yes, we are adults supporting a soccer team, and we're fervent fans. But that doesn't mean that we should be getting abuse from anybody, be it children, be it grown adults, other grown adults. But we had children throwing things at us, cans and food, and I was trying to get down to the field after the game to join the team for the celebration, and I was chased out by a bunch of kids throwing stuff at me, throwing rocks and cans and that kind of stuff. And for what it's worth, I mean, silly string is always fun, but yeah, I got silly string too. So, I mean, and I didn't engage with them, that's not that's not the point of this whole thing, but like, yeah, hooliganism can be a problem, but like those were kids, right? And I thought to myself, I couldn't imagine what it would look like if the kids that came to Vermont Green games, acted like that. The Far Post kids, the kids from Nordic, the kids from BFC, they would all be pulled from their teams. So I will say that Western Mass should be embarrassed and should be ashamed of themselves. But on the other side of that, we had supporters, and this was really the first time we had away supporters coming to matches at Virtue Field for these playoffs, and we had never really had an extended period of home playoff matches. We had fans come from Lionsbridge, a number of them. They almost filled that whole first section of the stands. And even last night, we had fans from that drove up from Alabama, right? The Lionsbridge fans were not appreciative of what we were doing. They were definitely very upset at the result of the game. They were very upset at the loudness of the fans and the boisterousness, I guess, if that's a word, of the fans. And, you know, that's expected. They traveled a long way. But the Alabama fans, I will say, were 1,000 times better. They were full throat the entire game. They were having a great time. Their owner was there, and I spoke to him after the match. Just a lovely guy. Even some of the players that we gently chirp on the field after the match. I went outside the locker room and waited for them to come out to go onto the bus, and I found the one guy that we were giving a lot of shit to. And I did find out what his favorite soup is, and it is broccoli cheddar. So that's one of the things that we chirp at them is, what's your favorite soup? But he said that, he said it was the best environment he's been in his entire career. And he said that they appreciated it. They appreciated it. And those fans that came up from Dothan, Alabama they were great. So, USL 2 banter does hit different. Yep. It's very true. It's very true. So
show me your soup.
Exactly. But the one thing we always say is what's your favorite soup?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the thing. I mean, it's, again, looking at this as someone that isn't, devoted entirely to any one team. My hope is that, when I was at when Portland played Hartford, and it seemed like everybody had a good time. Yeah, okay, both supporters groups were chanting at each other a little bit, here and there. But again, it's it can be intense, it can be loud, but there's we just hopefully you can stay away from lines being crossed, and then ultimately when the game's over, I'm not trying to sound cheesy or anything, but I have seen times before where the supporters groups from two teams are actually just able to interact with each other as normal people that can recognize that, okay, we're cheering for different teams, but we have something in common. We don't just go to soccer games. We go to soccer games and we stand up for an hour and a half, and we spend 2 hours in the parking lot before, and we chant and we sing and we do, you know what I mean? I would hope, as someone that doesn't participate in that there's opportunities for more of a kinship between the supporters groups. It doesn't have to be we don't have to cosplay as ultras, and we don't really have to go to that extent. Which is
we're fun ultras in Vermont.
That's what I mean, right? I mean, there are some MLS they put scarves on, and they they're really gonna go and cut someone up in the parking lot and all that nonsense.
I can say though, Tom, that we had a few fans who were standing with us. They're not part of our group, but they were standing with us, and they were hurling some abusive stuff toward opposing fans, toward referees, toward players. And as a group, we made sure to let the ownership of the team know, and they were removed. They tried to show up again and stand in with us, and I made sure that they knew that they were not welcome there. So we, as a supporters group too, also make sure that we take care to promote the image of the club, because when we're there doing what we do, we are representing the club. We're representing the values of the club, and we're representing our state and ourselves, so in our families even. So when people are out there hurling racist and abusive things at players and other fans, it's just not acceptable, and we have to make sure as a supporters group that we're not just chirping the players, fun chirping of the players, but that we're also taking care to make sure that our own supporters who are being abusive are rooted out and removed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Anybody got anything else on just supporters groups in general, and the again, hopefully this can become a really great thing where we have so many teams now that are in close proximity to one another, that it can be something that everybody can be intense about, but can also enjoy it.
I'd like to take. Go ahead, Matt. I'm going to take it in a completely different direction, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah, let me wrap it up with this then. The only thing I'd like to see is a little bit more transparency from the front offices and the teams, like I said earlier, to own in partnership. Collective punishment does not help. It's a broad brush that you have to paint with because it's the only alternative. And don't get me wrong, the collective punishment was absolutely appropriate for Defiant 1636, but it's not fair that, and I am just throwing an arbitrary number out there. I don't have inside information on this, but it's not fair that 5 fans ruined it for 600 that just want to have a good time. And so there's got to be something more done in that regard. And in addition to, the clubs both steered this into the direction it went. Obviously, no one wanted violence. No one wanted the code of conduct violated. But like going into this week, I think of how Chip was at a TNA wrestling event at the Ryan Center in Rhode Island. And then randomly, Hartford Athletic puts out a video of their mascot Dylan ripping up a picture of Chip and body slamming him onto a couch. And like,
Really?
and it's really interesting because you talk about, like, if you ask a Hartford Athletic fan, they'll always say RIFC is too new. We don't know why they're obsessed with us. Stop thinking about us. But then like you go and see these manufactured moments from the clubs and it's like, okay, well, there is some obsession there in both directions. And so it would be good if the clubs could find a way to make sure that they inform each other's fan bases of what their responsibilities are on game day, and at the end of the day, this is just a match. This is an entertainment product. You're supposed to go have fun, even if your team loses, and you should never be thinking about throwing a bottle at a player or punching a fan because things didn't go your way. Like, the clubs own this to a certain extent too, and I'd like to see some more accountability from them. That's all.
No, that's great. I think that's a great point, right? I mean, I think maybe teams can get a little carried away trying to oversell these types of things because they want to fill the stadium and they want to get people to tune in on TV. But I do think, that they have to acknowledge what you're playing into this. And then, like you said, you can't just turn around and say, "Oh, well, it's the guys that sit over there that did everything," really. And the goalkeeper. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, I think Siaha should know better. Maybe that's a situation that the referees could have dealt with a little bit more harshly. You're not really supposed to. I mean, they take this, I don't want to say more seriously, but like, in Europe, in the Premier League, you cannot clearly and actively like try and incite the wrath of the crowd. Like it's not a thing, and you can be harshly penalized if you do.
We talked about this on the show last week, that even if there was a punishment, would it carry into the next match suspension, or would it carry into a regular season
2 different
fine
competitions.
suspension? Right. I don't yet know. I don't have an answer. We reached out to the league. They have not talked about anything disciplinary report related or adjacent. Nate, I don't know. Have you heard anything or in your opinion, should Siaha face a game day suspension in the regular season, or just a significantly high but undisclosed fine?
Yeah, it's like I'm hesitant to make kind of an assessment without knowing exactly what the league's rules are when it comes to that thing, or if they're that kind of thing, because you don't see it often, and you don't see it happen to that level very often.
Yeah.
I think Siaha did get a yellow. I'm not, and I assume it was related to some sort of taunting that happened post game, if you can call it that. But beyond that, I have not heard, don't know of anything that he is facing. And I would imagine with Hartford set to play in a couple days, that if nothing's been said yet, it either will be said very soon, or he'll be in action kind of as they return home to play New Mexico United on Wednesday. So I do agree that it would probably carry into the regular season, but I don't know. The fact that nothing has been said publicly yet is not a good sign for any Rhode Island fans hoping to see Siaha have to take a seat next game.
Would you expect him to be, like, as a fan, do you think he deserves a suspension? Because the Hartford fans think he did nothing wrong and that he walks on water.
Right.
That's a stretch.
I will say I don't endorse what he did, obviously, and I don't think it was the right thing to do in that moment. I think he deserves to face some sort of repercussion for his actions, but I honestly don't know if it should be a full suspension or just a fine. but I think there should be something that's done about it, just so we don't make this a standard, sort of, just so we don't say kind of as a league that like, hey, you can go and do this, and it's fine. Like you'll just get a yellow and you can brush it off and it's fine. Like that should not be the standard we're setting. So I think he should face some sort of punishment for it. But I'm not sure personally if I would go all the way to a suspension. And I'm talking generally on the post match. I know that one moment where you definitely took it too far on national TV. That's a kind of a different story, but just in general.
Yeah, and for an independent to weigh in, I was actually surprised to see him in that second match. I figured it was probably a sure thing that he was going to be suspended for that one match due to his post-match actions. So, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I don't think USL or either of the two teams wants that to be the thing that gets played up on social media and gets them attention. Like, I really don't think they want to head down that direction. Like this isn't WWE. Like that's something you would expect to see on, again, like the heel comes out and he's trying to antagonize the crowd. It's like, I mean, it works, but I don't think that's really what the league wants to get attention for. All right, quite a bit there. So we'll have to see how it goes next time they play. But honestly, I mean, all like kidding aside, I do really hope that these teams can all play one another, and it's just a really good spirited, intense rivalry, and then we can all you can all hang out and drink beer in the parking lot together before and after the game, because you are, like I said, all kind of kindred spirits. You all approach going to soccer games in the same way, while the rest of us old folks just retreat home.
So Tom, if I may, I was just going to add one more piece to that. Take it in a little bit of a different direction here. But the Hearts was getting ready to play Inter Miami in a friendly, right? And Inter Miami holds USL League One rights if they choose to come up. And, that ended up falling to the wayside. And instead, we've got Halifax Wanderers FC from the Canadian Premier League. And we're going to go ahead and have a friendly with them August 6th. So it gets me to thinking, we've got several Canadian Premier Leagues teams right and around the New England area. I would just like to hear maybe a few thoughts on possibilities some 3 and 4 years down the road. Who knows? Maybe when we do this promotion relegation thing, any sort of merger with Canada or maybe we just invite them into the Jägermeister Cup and roll them in that way. Any thoughts for the panel on that?
Well, maybe you could have like a Maple Cup or something like that. Like the.
Whoa!
Oh no, it's taken. That's right. Sorry,
Pump
my
the
mistake.
brakes. Pump the brakes.
No, Mike,
I was gonna say,
if you want to have a Maple Cup tournament, you can invite Maine down to play us, but just know that we own the cup and we own the best maple syrup, hands down. Quantity is definitely not as good as quality, right? And we all know that Maine does not make better maple syrup than Vermont. Maybe they're overtaking us with beer, but not maple syrup. Shawn, we will fight to the death over this.
All I was going to say was that it was a perfect segue into something that was going to be talked about a little later in the show. But we talked about the All-Star and the significance of that match. I think that USL could be primed now to offer their version of some cross-country or all-star game in getting on and attaching their bandwagon to the CPL before MLS goes, oh, we should open this up. Like, could you just imagine next year MLS goes, you know what? There's Mexico, America, and Canada in the World Cup. We should do an all-star game and have all 3 countries participate. And then, like, right now, there's a bunch of storylines about Forge being one of the premier teams and knocking out their MLS bigger brothers. So I think if you were in the cup competition and tournament and play, if you were Brett Louie in the USL, you should be having phone calls with whoever runs the CPL right now and go, hey, let's get this thing going and let's make a way to have an exhibition match or several, or get it into an entire tournament play, and let's get it done now.
I actually think it would be a good idea. I had thought about that before. I don't really follow the CPL.
Do we need a drinking game when you agree with me? Because I feel like last time we were up to sticks.
Would be getting pretty warm last time.
I know it's weird. I come here prepared to agree with no one on anything, but no, I just like you said,
That tracks, Tom.
It's an interesting idea, right? If you're the CPL, if you're the USL Championship, to maybe try and come up with a way where these teams could play each other. I don't know. It might be interesting. I don't know where CPL teams do their preseason, but I would guess that it's not in Canada. So I don't know if they're like their preseason stuff would line up where you could maybe try like a preseason tournament, down in the southern states, see how that goes. Maybe bring them into the Jägermeister Cup. But I definitely think there's some interesting possibilities there. But Mike, I mean, what was your experience at the last 2 years of having a Canadian team come over to play Vermont?
So this year was a little bit more of a challenge. We played FC Laval. They ended up, I think they're 5th in their league this year, which is fine. The previous year we played the previous year's champion and just ran them out of the building. And they brought their first team squad down to play against our second team squad. So, I mean, the quality might be there. I mean, and also just take this into consideration too, is that we're playing the teams that are in League One Quebec, right? We're not playing. So they're also a pre-professional league. Mm-hmm. So we're not playing Canadian Premier League teams, right? Canadian Premier League teams would definitely run Hartford out of the building, but another jab at Hartford, I'm sorry. But I think that like the experience with the Canadian teams is that they have teams that can compete and that will compete. But a lot of these players end up coming to the States to play in the USL, to play in the USL, 1, to play in USL 2. We have, Jude Michel, who is our second keeper, actually first team for half of the season, really, who came from the Canadian leagues. It's not like these players are all just staying in the Canadian league because they're from Canada. Yeah. So I think that a lot of these players have quality to play in these. If you wanted to play a tournament or something like that, I don't necessarily think that the clubs have the power to be able to do it, or the ability to travel to come down here and play in any kind of an all-star competition, right? Between those teams. And to be honest, I don't know the quality of the Canadian Premier League, but I do know the quality of the Quebec League. And if they're going to do a pre-professional type of a tournament, they're not going to beat the USL 2.
Yeah, and I was just,
go ahead, Shawn.
I was just kind of thinking, just kind of running through it mentally, what it might look like if you take the Canadian Premier League, which I think has got about 8 teams in it. And we've got a group of 6 in the Jägermeister Cup for this year go round. Now keep in mind, we've got more teams coming in to the USL League One next year. We got some 6 or 7 teams that are going to be coming in. So you can easily see how next year's Jägermeister Cup could be about 8 groups. Well, we got 8 Premier League Canadian teams. So you can either do one or two things with that. You can take one Canadian team and put them in each group, or if you want to lean to the side where we want to keep travel a little bit on the as least costly as possible for the Canadian teams, 2 apiece across the northern side, and just make sure that everyone understands those 2 Canadian teams aren't going to be playing against each other, right? So 5 are in a group, they're not going to be playing each other type thing. So I think it's something to be kind of maybe mulled over a little bit. USL could probably have some fun with it. Hopefully someone's at least poking at it, because I think we could have some fun with those guys.
Nathan, what do you think? Would you like to engage more with our Canadian brethren more than we currently do?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it, but the biggest kind of inhibitor here would be the travel. They'd have to sort that out. I mean, from an objective standpoint, if you could get those teams on a field playing each other, like fantastic,
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
You don't get, you don't get really that kind of competition ever, where you can compare USL and MLS, even though those teams only play each other a select few times a year. But like this is the third party that's just bringing in an entirely different level to this, where it's like I don't really have any idea how we'd match up against some of these Canadian teams, or how our schedule compares to the Canadian teams, or how the way we do things compares to the Canadian team. So if you can make it happen, I think it's always good in terms of visibility for the sport, exposure for a lot of these teams. I'll be honest, I haven't watched a lot of the Canadian Premier League, so I don't know what their atmospheres are like. I know a little bit about what their stadiums are like, but I think it's always a good thing to kind of get cross league. Is always exciting, right? Because we're going to see Loudoun United and we're going to see Charleston Battery, and we know those guys, and it's great. But without kind of mixing it up a little bit, it gets a little bit old, especially in the USL when you're trying to kind of constantly bring in new fans and market to new fans. So it would be a good thing. I think there would just be kind of a lot of figuring out. I mean, this year's Jägermeister Cup groups were regional, and they were trying not to put as much travel stress on the teams. And with some teams having tougher budgets than others, it might get a little difficult. But if you can put them all on the field together and have them play a match, I'm all for it.
Yeah. I think it'd be a lot of fun. We were gonna go to Halifax this summer, but we were concerned about being able to re-enter the country that we live in. So we've decided to just stay in the United States and just kind of ride it out. But Halifax looks like a great town. It looks like a very New England-y town, which makes a lot of sense because it's not very far away. They got a nice little stadium up there. But yeah, like I don't know anything about the Canadian. I've watched Halifax play like 3 times, and the thing I like about them the most is they have a giant Volkswagen symbol on the front of their shirt. So that's about the extent to my Canadian Premier League knowledge. But a couple of their teams did knock out. Not that it's particularly difficult this year, but they did knock Toronto and they did knock Montreal out of the Canadian Cup, or the Canadian. I can't remember what it's called. They have a cup competition in Canada, and CPL teams did knock out 2 out of the 3 MLS teams in that tournament already. All right, now look, what about All-Star games? I'll just quickly start off. I watched none of the All-Star game. I watched none of the Skills Challenge. I don't care for volleyed soccer balls into some sort of like arcade game, skee ball kind of thing. Like I personally could care less about any of those things. I think it's silly. I think they're trying to be American, whereas most other All-Star games, no one really pays attention to them anyway. The Pro Bowl, from what I understand, they basically just play flag football now. Like it's all a joke. So does anyone enjoy All-Star games? Would anyone like to see a USL championship or a USL League One or some sort of or maybe just a USL period, All-Star game with like a futures game and all that other nonsense?
I can say that so going down and experiencing the MLS All-Star game this year was it was a good time. Mostly was the company, but like we did I think like the MLS they did a good job with it. Like they made the stadium friendly. The supporters group made the stadium friendly. I don't think they did a lot in terms of like fan engagement type stuff. There wasn't a lot of stuff, outside of like the Fan Fest day that they had like 4 days earlier. Like there wasn't a lot of stuff in and around the stadium. There weren't like giveaways and like all kinds of stuff that would like, get the fans involved in it. And it was fun to see the All-Stars from like Liga MX and play against the MLS All-Stars. That was really fun. I think that it was probably good that Messi and Jordi Alba didn't show up because I think they would have taken a lot of that, a lot of the fun out of it, really. I think we got to see a lot of players that we wouldn't have actually gotten to see. So that All-Star game was good. Like sure, the skills competition, not always the most fun. There's ways to like spice up skills competitions and that kind of stuff. The NHL doesn't really pull off a great skills competition. There's and the NBA All-Star game, the NHL All-Star game are usually high scoring, and they keep switching up the formats of it. I think plain old East versus West would always work out, right? And it would always work out.
I think that having been there, I agree, Mike. Great company was what made it. It was also fun though, just to like have an excuse to drink in a soccer environment and then not worry about your team winning or losing on the night. Like there's something pure about being a neutral. But again, kind of like with baseball, there's no table stakes, and you can't really you can't copy the home run derby, right? Like it's difficult. And so I don't think the skills challenges are it either. What I think MLS should do, and USL, if you're listening, feel free to steal this idea and then charge me later. But there's a lot of tremendous success with the 5-a-side tournaments, the 6-a-side tournaments that are starting to kind of grasp the nation, like with the TST and everything like that. I think that's where the future of this could be, where you get the same players to come out, but they do a significantly smaller game, a smaller footprint. Maybe it's borderline futsal, and you put 5 MLS players against 5 Liga MX for 15 minutes, see who can do the most damage. You're still going to get the bragging rights. You're still going to see the skills. They can then, weigh it on which league won more of the rounds, and then they can pick the 5 best players out of the tournament to create one super team, and you capstone it with maybe like or 6, and then you capstone it with a larger, full pitch game for 15 minutes. Like, these are exhibition games of no consequence. There's nothing that they're playing for other than pride. Like, make it more fun, speed up the game, make it smaller, find a way to attract the new generation who seems to love this new format, and then lean in on it. Like that to me is the future. Or find a way to make these games of consequence without having, Messi and Alva not available for the most important match of the season.
I will say this too. For me, not bothered by the fact that it exists, but my sentiment is, having obviously not gone, I'm sure it's a fun time and it looks like a great experience. But for someone who watched it on TV, I lost interest in 25 minutes. Like, just being honest, I lost interest in it in about half an hour, and went about my business elsewhere. Just because if I'm in there and I'm in the stadium and I'm watching it, like I would be engaged for 90 minutes. It would be a very fun experience. But because there's no stakes to it, because there's not much going on, like I just did not feel like it was worth my time to watch it. And that being said, I don't have a problem with the fact that the MLS All-Star Game exists. It's definitely a cool concept, and sure, we can tweak it around a little bit, and it could be better in a lot of ways. My major problem with it is the fact that it was midweek. The fact that it's sandwiched between, if you're going to make an All-Star Game and you're going to mandate that players play in it or face, the suspension as we saw, that's fine. That can be your rules, but have an All-Star break. Have teams take a break and play it on a Saturday if you're going to do that. Just because, for example, direct example here for the Revs, you have Carlos who played in that game and then had to fly back and play a Friday game 2 days later. And these guys are getting subbed out. They're at most putting in a 30-minute shift. But again, that's a lot to ask for a player to take that time out of your week to fly to Austin, to do a couple training sessions with a brand new team, to do whatever it is, the skills challenge, get out there for half an hour, go back, and then continue to kind of go about their regular season, to kind of stick it right in the middle of a game week. And this is not the case for the Revs necessarily, but a lot of teams who are in that midpoint of the season, really tight playoff races, really tight point margins, to kind of take that chunk out of their week. It's just, like, for me, it would be a tough ask. So I just give the players a little bit more time. But other than that, Nate, I think it still happened.
Nate, what's crazy about like the rest and stuff is we could go full Pro Bowl on it. And when you get to the Leagues Cup final, every team that's already been knocked out and they're not playing in the breaks, both teams are through breaks, then you have the Sunday game as the final, wherever it is. And then Saturday, you've picked your All-Star game, and you have all the players that don't need to be available for that match, and they've taken all that time off to rest and recover. It is poorly positioned not just in terms of a midweek, but also in the schedule timing. So many of these teams are going to have a break right now. It's like, why did we condense this for what,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. The run up to that, every team in MLS played 5 games in a 15-day stretch, and then they had the All-Star break, and then 12 teams played on Friday night, and the other 18 played on Saturday night. So I think that was probably the most valid criticism, was if you want this to be a big deal to the point that you're saying to players, you're either legitimately injured or you have to show up or you'll be suspended, then you need to do it on a weekend. But like, if you want to make it a big deal, then make it a big deal and stop the league for a weekend. I wonder how much the owners would be on board with that, because anyone that watched the game Friday night for the Revs, even a Friday night, that means probably 10,000, 12,000 less people in attendance. A lot of these teams live off of Saturday home games in July. The other thing, maybe just steal a good idea from somebody else. Make it an Eastern Conference versus Western Conference, which a lot of people have called for, and just say, okay, we're going to give it some meaning. Whichever conference wins this game, they're representative in the MLS Cup final. They host the MLS Cup final. Like, give them something.
Well, you'd have to move that. That would ruin the table stakes of where you are. But you could do, make
it count.
You could create like an FA Shield or Community Shield, and you could do the winner of the Eastern Conference and the winner of the Western Conference, independent of where they end up in the MLS Cup. They play, and then that game is decided by the All-Stars winner. So, and if one of those teams goes to the MLS Cup, you bring it down a notch. You could do that.
Yeah. I will. Shawn, I'll let you back in here in a second. The idea of not playing 11v11 is actually, I think, a very good idea. It's really ridiculous. I know.
Everyone, take a drink.
No, I know. It's bullshit. I don't have a beer with me tonight. Maybe that's why.
This is water.
We're not going to come at you with a full frontal assault,
No, but look, I mean, it's the thing. Like, I was thinking, like, actually, what would actually be exciting to watch would be like 1v1s, like Carlos Hill against, whatever, like Matt Miazga or whoever, like 1v1s with goalkeepers, or is a training game that like every team plays at some point, where it's like you have keepers and it's a 2-against-1 going this way, and then 2 players from this team come back in and it's a 3-against-2 going this way. Like, come up with some actual like fun training type games, like directional training, 2-against-1s, 2v2s, that sort of thing, and like make that like the skills competition, instead of watching players play skee ball with a soccer ball. Like, have them play small-sided soccer. I really can't believe that someone else came up with that, but I think that might be, again, like, do something that's interesting besides, it's a midweek game. Like Nathan is someone that actually genuinely enjoys watching soccer and got 25 minutes into it and was like, there's got to be something else on TV tonight. But Shawn, I mean, would you like to see, say, a handful of the best players from League One get an opportunity to play in an all-star game with USL Championship players? Like, some sort of way to highlight, kind of bring those two leagues together in a fun way outside the Jägermeister Cup. Or do you also hate all-star breaks?
Yeah, it's going to keep it short and sweet and say I don't really care for it. If someone was going to ask me for an idea to fill the space, they're probably not going to want to hear what I got to say, because it's not good for the big money grab, right? I'm probably going to be more along the lines of, get a group of MLS players or USL Championship players or USL League One players and get some of the youth out there and put them on the field and showcase the youth, and whether they're actually, one player playing with them per side or they're coaching them or whatever that looks like, and, put them out there on the field and have like 4 or 5 games going on at the same time, short fields, 5-5, that type of deal, and just kind of have some fun with it and showcase the youth. That would be me. But that is completely the opposite direction of doing, kind of an all-star deal. So,
Yeah, but you could pack something like that in to the week, right? Like you could have like U Soccer Day or something. Believe me, U.S. Soccer would be all if those players had to register and pay some sort of fee. U.S. Soccer would be all over that. I mean, they'll jump on anything that they can do to make more money off of kids playing soccer. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of different things that could be done that could make it more enjoyable. And I think like some of the stuff was just kind of like, again, I watched some clips like here and there, and it's just, I don't know. Like I really enjoy soccer, but I didn't really, I didn't enjoy too much of that. But again, just quickly, would you guys be, Shawn we're gonna put Mark Shawn down as a no, but Nathan and Matt, would you like to see the USL again? This is another opportunity for USL to show MLS, this is what you could be doing. So should they come out and do, some sort of, five-a-side competition next year and just kind of throw it in MLS's face that we can do what you do, but we do it better?
Again, make it a soccer weekend, and you start with five-a-sides throughout the day. You make a big spectacle of it. You make a mascot five-a-side. The Saturday night game is the quote-unquote all-star game between us versus, let's say, the Canadian Premier League, and then the Sunday match is the Jägermeister Cup final, because that already has to be randomly selected between two teams at a random interval. So then let's just make it a away satellite space where a fan that wants to really get into the weeds of USL, they get to see a whole weekend of soccer excellence and then go from there. I think that's totally within their wheelhouse. But the curiosity will be, how do you start figuring that out at scale once Division 1 and Pro Rail comes in? Like then it's, I think we're going to be at 50 teams next year across the professional USL landscape. What do we do when there's a Division 1?
Nathan, and you think Matt has found the secret to unlocking? This is ridiculous. I might actually go to that.
So you're talking about an event like this held by the USL Championship.
Yeah.
For me,
whole big weekend.
Sure. You would have to do some really solid marketing, some really good marketing, because the USL Championship doesn't have quite that like neutral site notoriety, so to say, and not neutral site isn't the right term because it would be at some team's home facility presumably, but like for Rhode Island, like say Rhode Island FC, like they're holding the USL Championship Skills Showcase weekend at Centerville Bank Stadium. How it would be a big kind of discussion. How do you get fans to come to that? How do you market it? How do you say to, for the USL, a lot of the fans, they're coming to, support their local team and have a good night out, but don't necessarily have that like overarching knowledge of the league, and don't really necessarily, besides the supporters group and the dedicated fans that do, the general populace of those games don't generally know what's happening outside of their team and maybe the opposing team. So you'd have to kind of, I just don't know how well it would work to kind of do something like that unless you had your kind of top marketing people on it. I think it would be fun. But in terms of people maybe traveling, you really only have that local market. So it would be difficult to pull off, I think, from a getting fans to be interested in it perspective. That being said, I think it would be cool. I wouldn't necessarily want to see like an all-star game like Matt said, but if you made it a fun weekend of something related to soccer, I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of it. I think it would just be difficult.
Just put it in Vegas. That solves everything.
Well, I mean, and you're not wrong though, right? Like you have to find a city that has the holding power from a tourist perspective to bring people in. Maybe there's something else that anchors them as a decision to go. So like I immediately think it's Miami, which we can talk about Miami FC until we're blue in the face, but it would be Miami, it would be Vegas, it would be maybe Orange County Soccer Club. Like those are three markets where people could use the excuse of, I want to go and check out those cities in those areas, and I'm also down to watch a weekend of fun and competitive soccer and interesting things about these two leagues. Like I think it can be done. And to Nate's point, like if it's done at the beginning of the season, then you can find the interest, especially in some of these smaller stadiums where you have to figure out how to get 6,000 people in. Like That's possible. If you were to go to Pitbull Stadium worldwide, where it's 50,000, that's a big problem. But it is manageable. You could do it, and if there's any testament to it, we just had the Major League Rugby final where the Free Jacks won it for the third time in a row, the three-peat. The stadium, it wasn't full, but with 1 week's notice, I'd say 7,000 people showed up, close to 7,000 for a week's notice. That's not bad. And not all of them were traveling fans. Now, granted, it was in New England's home territory, so definitely a bit of an advantage there. But I think it's possible long term. And if the league puts the effort into it, if they feel like there's a return on the spotlight that it provides, I think there's something tangible there.
Look, I think that Americans in general love an all-star game. They do. They just love to go and see all the stars collected in one place. How you're going to do that and how that's going to happen with Pro Rel, that's another whole story. It's another whole podcast probably. But I think that, like, you're right. You have to put it in a place where, like, it's a destination place to go. But, it's also something if the USL at some point wants to try and compete with Major League Soccer, it's going to have to be something that they're going to have to do to engage fans. But I talked about fan engagement, right? Like, you have to be able to get people who are either neutrals or who are kind of falling away from the MLS, and want to go to this new kind of league that has new to them, that has this pro rel European style of soccer. You're going to have to entice people to come there. Yeah. And I think an all-star game might help with that type of a thing. But, it's all about logistics, and it's all about doing it the right way. Because if you fail in that, if you fail in the fan engagement, if you fail in any type of effort to engage fans, then your whole product could fail. Right, because the MLS has billionaires behind it, right? And they have long history behind it, and they have a lot of big supporters groups and big cities behind them. So, I think their USL is doing the right thing and engaging some of the smaller cities, and finding those soccer fans who are either have fallen away from the MLS model, and want something different, or some of the new soccer fans that are out there and coming into their coming into their towns, So, I mean, it's kind of like, and I hate to keep, harping on USL2 stuff, but, like, it's kind of the way that Vermont did it. And the way that Patrick Ferner and Sam Glickman did it was to bring something to a town that was already had a good youth soccer setup, and put a pre-professional team there that was not just strong and successful, but had a good mission behind it, and fan engagement is what they do. And they're really, really good at it. So I think if you did that, you'd have to be able to have that fan engagement there to build that. And it would build that. I think that USL Premier, if you could do it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I definitely think that, there are risks that USL, well, I mean, I think they've shown that they are willing to take those types of risks. And so hopefully they continue to do so, because I think ultimately we're all going to benefit, whether you're, I don't think there has to be this decision to be an MLS fan or a USL fan, but some people only have so much capacity for soccer. They only have so much money to spend on games. So yeah, I think the more ideas that get tried, all of us are going to benefit. All right. We're coming up on an hour and a half. That is certainly sufficient for anyone that is listening to this show, as good as the four guests are, and I occasionally can be. We do feel that an hour and a half of us is probably enough for the month of July. So, can we all just quickly wrap up? What is your show, and what do you have coming up in the next couple of weeks? Start with Shawn.
Yeah, so you can catch me over on the Dirigo Union channel over on YouTube and certainly on Spotify. Everything always starts with Dirigo Union, and I actually host a show over there on the Dirigo Union channel called The Crossover, DU Crossover. And I'm certainly going to try to get a hold of someone over on the Halifax FC and the Wanderers and whatnot, and see if we can have a little conversation with how the Canadian Premier League works and kind of their backstory and all that stuff, and what we have to look forward to when the Wanderers come into town to play the Hearts here in August 6th. So hopefully I can get that lined up, and that'll be out there within a week's time or so, and enjoy that. And you can, of course, always find me over on the Blazing Musket writing articles for the Hearts of Pine. And what the Hearts have kind of in front of them now on the heels of the Pittsburgh Riverhounds and the Jägermeister Cup, they're going to be on the road against a very stingy Knoxville in terms of defense. We're going to visit those guys 2 more times between now and the end of the regular season. And then we're going to have Richmond, and we're going to have a very angry Spokane, which is not really enjoying life lately. So I'm sure they'll be coming to Fitzpatrick Stadium looking to take out some frustration on the Hearts. So that's what I've got over here.
Nathan, what do you? I don't know if you're still contributing to the Blazing Musket besides coming on the show, but where can people find
you? You can catch me.
Yeah,
you can catch me here next month.
Yeah.
So for reasons that will be known to some and not known to others. I'm not as active, in the online space anymore, but I still will be your source of information for this hour and a half of fun we have every month here. But for Hartford coming up, another midweek against New Mexico United, they return home after kind of wreaking havoc at Centerville Bank Stadium for the last couple weeks. Home fans get the chance to welcome them back against New Mexico United. And then looking later in the month, you've got the Jägermeister Cup trip to San Antonio. You've won yourself that right in penalties, at Rhode Island. So they'll be looking to take advantage of that as they look to get as close to hardware as they have in their 6-year history. And then you return that weekend to play Rhode Island. So it's going to be a fun month of August, and it's going to be a busy one as well for both teams. And, they're putting together some of the best form that they've really had all season. They've now lost just one of their last 5. And for a team in last place, you see stats like that and you start to think, well, maybe there's something brewing here, but that always kind of seems to be the case. So August will be a telling month for this season, and it'll either kind of keep the spark alive or put it to bed for good.
All right, and Matt, the content machine that is the Raising Anchor podcast, what do we have to look forward to from you and RIFC in the weeks ahead? Matt, you are muted.
Rookie mistake. All those flowers you gave me, and I couldn't even give myself a proper send off. Hey, we're live right now on the main channel interviewing defender Ame Mabika as we speak. So you get me in 2 places at one time. I mean, obviously this isn't live right now, but that's a fun fact. So yep, the show is always on Monday. We do either a mailbag or a player interview, and then the main show doing a recap and preview on Thursdays with wonderful guests sprinkled in between. Right now, I'm not going to lie to you, Rhode Island is in a slump. They're in a funk. Winless in July, not something fun to have to acknowledge. And what gets better is we're probably in the roughest part of the schedule now between Pittsburgh Riverhounds, Detroit City FC, Loudoun United, all teams we have not beat in the regular season. And then we get to see Hartford all over again, capstone with Charleston Battery and Louisville City. So the month of August is going to be a very tough month for fans of the Amber and Blue. And now we have a Jägermeister Cup match sprinkled in there as well against Birmingham. So, look, this team's got to figure it out, and they got to figure it out at home in front of fans. Fans are getting tired of not seeing goals. They're getting tired of not seeing wins. But all faith is in Conno Smith still. It's more of a getting it right and getting the smaller details put in place. And now that the team is mostly healthy, maybe some sparks can fly, and maybe we can see a turnaround of the season very similar to last year. But until then, I'll hold my breath and continue to predict draws until improvement shows up. So yeah.
All right, and not certainly not last but not least, Mike, can you take us out? Can you plug the USL League Two final one last time for us?
Yeah, look, we have the final coming up on Saturday at Virtue Field. We have, like I said, USL2 royalty in Ballard FC coming to Virtue Field. It's gonna be a hard fought game. Ballard plays a similar attacking style to Vermont. I think it's gonna be a really big battle in the midfield. And I don't think we're going to hold back this time. A lot of these players that have come back from their college commitments to play in these playoffs are going to be out there. They're going to be playing for the fans. I think there hasn't been a team in Vermont that has played for the fans as much as this team. Zachary Zenge, he's given everything to this club over the past 3 seasons, and I see him probably going to Columbus to compete at Columbus too, but at the end of the season. But I do want to say that I think that the super subs of Owen O'Malley and the Frenchest man who's ever been produced, Julien Labordelou, will be out there to start the game. And to play the 90 minutes, they have shown that they can compete on this level and will be able to compete on a higher level in the future. But like any of you Vermont fans that are out there, please catch the stream. You can go to the Vermont Green website and find the stream there. It's going to be probably the best stream you're going to find in USL2. Best announcers at the very least. There's a lot of great slow-mo replays and that kind of stuff like that you're gonna find in some of the upper leagues. But Vermont tries to put out the best product possible, and it's gonna be an amazing game. The fans are gonna be up for it, and I expect a lot of Ballard fans to come, and we'll welcome them with open arms until the whistle blows. But just join us there, and I have to mention United in Green. We're bringing in a producer who's going to help us with our social media and that kind of stuff, because the 3 of us have day jobs and beyond. So we're bringing in a producer who's going to help us out with some of that and some of the social media and making sure that our show flows. And we're going to try and compete with the Raising Anchor podcast as far as the content machine goes, but it will only be for a short period of like 3 or 4 months a year.
Oh, come on. Raising Anchor did
Gotta live the marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Raising Anchor did 100 shows before the team even played a game. It wasn't 100, but they
gotta have one show for each player announcement,
All right, look, appreciate all you guys making the time to come on. Apparently, I am supposed to plug this show, which I haven't done in the previous 22 episodes. Apparently, that's a part of the responsibilities of hosting a podcast. So if you have been listening to the show, please do like and review us wherever you get your podcast from. It does really help. Please do also, if you're catching this on the Blazing Musket podcast, feel free to leave a comment down below. If you're watching the video as well, we'd love to hear back from some of you. We really do appreciate the download numbers and the listeners. So please do feel free to get in touch, like and review us. We've all been having a really good time doing this. We are also kind of looking for a producer as well, because my editing is not very good, and I'd like to get our engagement on YouTube up a little bit, because it currently doesn't exist. So Sam and I are scheming away at trying to find someone to help us out with that as well. So again, thank you to the 4 of you. Thank you to everyone listening to the show. Look forward to having you guys on back next month. And again, enjoy and appreciate all of our listeners as well.